I am the technical lead in Jubaili Solar based in Dubai. Today's presentation is on plant construction guideline using Huawei Fusion Solar inverters. So we go ahead, we start our presentation. In order to proceed ahead, before I would like to tell you guys that these presentation will be of around 30 minutes. After this presentation, we will have a feedback of you guys on the nature of this presentation and how it edit to your information. And after that, we will have a short test for understanding of you guys, which will also give us a feedback of how good the learning has been for us, and if there is any room for us to further enhance our webinar methods. So to proceed with the plant construction guideline, there are key points that need to be noticed when you are installing Huawei inverters. So we go ahead with the first slide, which is about the earthing of your inverters. So now there can be many different scenarios where you will be installing your inverters. It could be on the back of your arrays on a ground mount. It could be on a wall, or it could be on a steel plate outdoor. One thing that has to be noticed, which is being discussed here, is the bracket must be reliably grounded and the inverter is directly connected to the VE via bracket. So in order to discuss the picture, to give you a background, our Huawei inverter has earthing points inside and outside of the inverter. These both earthing points are at the same potential. So if you are earthing inside the inverter, you will not be needing earthing on the outside. And if you are using the earthing point outside the inverter, then you do not need to do the earthing inside the inverter. We have many different inverter models. The smaller ones have only one earthing point at the outside, but the bigger ones comes with the removable cabinet where you can do some connections. So those inverters comes with 2 points of earthing, and you can use any of them. Having multiple scenarios in mind, if we speak of the ground mount where you have large arrays and you have a big space at the back side of your tables to install the solar inverters, you can install your solar inverter in that location, and that's very good because it provides a shade to the inverter as well. And if your tables are properly grounded, then in such ground mount scenarios, you can use the outside earthing point of the solar inverters and connect to the frame on which the inverters are tied to. So the other way it could be that you are installing your inverter on a wall. In that scenario, normally people prefer to use the inside earthing point of the inverter. In this picture, you can see on the right side the earthing point, which is visible inside the maintenance compartment of the inverter. So inside the inverter or outside the inverter, you will have 2 points. Why Huawei has given these 2 points is that you can do the daisy chain of the earthing of the different inverters to each other and take one single cable from the last inverter to the grounding point inside your LV panel. So now you have the two options: either you use the inside earthing point or the outside, and you can install your inverter at in different scenarios. During this presentation, if you guys have any question, please mention your question by clicking the question mark in the chat box and then writing your question and sending. So these will take all those questions to the Q&A mode. At last, when I will finish my presentation, I will be able to answer all those queries which were taken as question in the chat box. So going ahead with the presentation, the inverter mounting bracket is recommended to be fixed by screws. So All Huawei inverters come with a frame inside the inverter packaging, which you can put onto the wall, and then you can hang on it. After hanging the inverter onto that bracket, you must screw the inverter as well to that bracket. You can have multiple scenarios as well where you can fabricate customized brackets as well for the inverter, such as for a pole installation, such as for a oval hole installation, reverse hole installation, or oval hole installation scenarios. So in all these scenarios, one thing is must that need to be taken care of is that the screwing is important. You can hang the inverter, yes, that will hold the inverter that onto the top of that frame. But in the long run, the system installation could face severe wind blows, which could loosen the inverter connection to that frame and may fail down. So one thing very important is that you must screw your inverter after hanging it onto the top of the frame of Huawei or the one which you have used as customized one. Direct sunlight on inverter should be avoided. Use a canopy for shading. Now, in most of scenarios for the CNI, the inverters are installed in outdoor. In case of a ground mount, you are recommended to install your solar inverters at the backside of your solar frame underneath the solar panels, which provides a very good shading and ventilation. If you're installing on a wall which is facing towards the sunlight, then you must have to make an extra canopy on the top of the solar panels, solar inverters, and also you have to consider the spacing which is mentioned on the Huawei user manual on the top of the solar inverters, such as the 60 kTL of Huawei inverter tells you that you must keep a spacing of around 500 mm for the proper cooling of the inverter. That is must. So the inverter can withstand the ambient temperature within the specifications, but the inverter is exposed to direct sunlight will increase the temperature of the inverter cabinet, which will affect the output of the inverter, which will derate the output. So although if you look at the data sheet, it mentions that the inverter can bear around minus 25 to 60 degrees Celsius. But yeah, there is a derating factor also involved with the temperature change. So the best way of installing your solar inverter is outdoor to have a shade when it is exposed to the sunlight. Inverter installation height and distance to be considered for easy operation and maintenance. So on the screen you can see different pictures. If you look at the one on the left top corner, the inverter is installed at a very big height, and maintenance of such inverter becomes very much difficult. You will need special ladders to climb up there and install, and also going of two people at that height it becomes very much difficult. And similarly, at the lower left corner, you can see that inverters are installed at a very small spacing from the ground. So the mud has been stick to the inverter cover. And also the negative thing about installing at a very low height is that the inverter will not receive a very good air ventilation from the bottom side. So Huawei inverters are taking the ventilation, the air from the bottom side and dissipating it from the top side, taking out the airflow from the top side. So normally, if you touch Huawei inverter on the top, it is much hotter compared to any other point of the inverter. So that is something very important in regard to uh, proper ventilation as well, that you install at a proper height. These heights are also mentioned in the Huawei user manual. When you open and on the very first few pages of the user manual, you will see the installation guideline, that what should be the spacing on the right, on the left, on the top, and the bottom. Similarly, in the picture shown to you at the center, where the solar inverters are installed in a floating PV plant, it is installed at a location where it is not easily accessible. So normally in such scenarios, it is good to have some walkways just beneath the solar inverter, and so that you can easily access the solar inverter for maintenance purposes. On the right side in the picture, you can see the inverters are installed, and the installer guy standing next to it can see the inverter very clearly, and if there is any maintenance required, he can take out the inverter easily. And maintenance will not require any special tool to go up very high, because it is very close to the person installing it. And the best way of installing the solar inverter is at a height where you can see the LEDs in front of your eyes. There could be project scenarios because due to the space constraint, you might be installing the inverters at a different height as well. That is also feasible. That is also okay. But you just need to consider the spacing required as per the HUAWEI user manual. If you are using it like a zigzag type of an installation, there is a special guideline for that as well, which is mentioned in the HUAWEI user manual. The inverter installation location should be considered for replacement. Now, in the long life of PV system, your inverter might face some malfunctions, and for that, if you have to go and check it, or you have to take it out, dismantle it, it will become very difficult if it is installed at a location which is not easily accessible. Such scenarios can be seen in the right two pictures. On the right side, the picture shown the inverter is installed at a very big height, and accessing the inverter becomes very difficult in that case. Even going 2% at that height is difficult. So similarly, in the floating PV plant, again the inverter is installed at a location where accessing the inverter is difficult, and removing would be similarly a very difficult scenario. So the best case is, as of the picture shown to you on the left side in this slide, where 2% can easily access the inverter, can dismantle it, and take it out. Modules arrangement recommendation. Now, based on project scenarios, you might be installing your solar modules either in portrait or a landscape. Normally, people prefer to go for the portrait orientation of solar panels, which benefits them at a low cost of the mounting structure, because on the width-wise solar inverter, solar panels are a smaller emitter, and that will cost them cheaper, because they will lay less amount of these purlins on a ground mount case especially. So if you're installing your solar panels on the landscape, that will give you a benefit, because your cells, your solar cells are connected to the diodes in the junction box of the solar panel. So the left side of the solar cells are connected to one diode, the center cells are connected to the second diode, and the right side of the solar cells are connected to the third diode. Normally, solar panels have these three diodes. So in case of a landscape, if a shadow occur at the lower side of the solar cells, which you can also see in this picture, the output of solar panel will be better, because your solar panel might bypass taking power from these solar cell string, and rather go ahead and take the output from the next two diodes in corresponding cells which are connected to that. So the graph of that will look as shown in this picture on the top. In contrast to that, if you're installing a solar panel in the portrait orientation, and if a shadow happens at the lower cells, so these cells are connected to all the three diodes. It means that you are affecting the output of the cells connecting to all the three diodes, and the graph of the output of these solar panel will look as shown in this picture. So you can see that the MPPT point of the both uh, solar panels are different. The one with the landscape has a higher power output in case of a shade, and the one with the portrait will have a lesser power output. So if you're installing in a landscape scenario, that you will get such benefits. And normally, shading in a ground mount is taken care of properly, but is still in the winter seasons, early morning or late in the afternoon, there is a slight possibility of shade, from front row to the back row. So in this scenario, you will get the benefit of higher production when you're installing your solar modules in the landscape method. Reasonable layout of panels arrangement to reduce the impact of block to generation. Now, as you all know that Huawei are making all the inverters with the multiple MPPTs. So each MPPT is independent from each other. And in the ground mount scenarios, you would might be making, multiple row tables, such as shown in this picture on the left top corner, where uh, four panels are in the landscape on the top of each other, and this is a four-row table. So, in case of a shadow at the lower rank of this table, um, so, the production of these solar panels with the shaded region will be low. And if you're making a string of all these solar panels which are shaded, and do not mix it with the solar panels at the second level, third level, or fourth level, uh, you will get the benefit that it will not affect the other solar panels. But in case if you are going to mix the shaded solar panel with the solar panels in the second, third, and fourth row, this might this will definitely actually affect in case of such shading occurrence. So what we suggest you is that you should make your stringing of lower rank solar panels to one string, the second row to second string, the third row to third string, the fourth row to a fourth string. And the lower rings should be connected to one MPPT. The second row should be connected to the different MPPT. The fourth to different MPPT. Similarly, like this, you will be connecting them all to different MPPTs. So you will get the benefit of such connections because if your lower range solar panels are generating less output, it will not affect the solar panel string, which is working at 100% efficiency. So this is a scenario as shown in this small SLD in the picture. You can see that the solar panel and the MPPT4 are shaded, and since the MPPTs are independent from each other, the MPPT4 is only affected, which might produce around 50%, but the first three MPPTs of these inverter is producing its 100%, because it is not affected due to the shade of the MPPT4. But in case the solar panels from MPPT4 were mixed with the first, second, and third MPPTs, in such scenarios, the output of the inverter in all MPPTs would be reduced. So you can take care of your string design when you're making your layouts, take using Huawei inverter and following the guideline. Um, Cross connection to save extra DC cables, a Leapfrog method is preferred over daisy chain. Most of you would already be aware of this connection type, but it's still this is put here for those who are not even aware of the Leapfrog type of the connection. What you can do is that uh, you can connect your solar panels. You can do stringing in two different methods. Connect every solar panel to each other and make a daisy chain. Uh, and get the positive and negative ends of your string at far from each other. These will lead you in using extra DC cable. But if you are using a leapfrog type of connection, you will be connecting your first cable to the first solar panel to the third solar panel, the third solar panel to the fifth solar panel, fifth to sixth, fifth to seventh, and accordingly you will be bringing back by putting a spacing between each solar panel. So in these way, your positive and negative terminals will be at one end, which will lead in, a decreased solar cable. So if you have a big power plant, these DC cable saving would be a lot for you. So two MPPTs should be having string connections in a way that either both have same orientation or different orientation. But strings connecting to one MPPT must be facing same orientation. Therefore, these slide stresses on the point that two strings under the same MPPT needs to be seen in the same orientation and same configuration. So, if string two strings into the MPPT1 is with a 10-degree tilt, and yeah, that is good that you are taken care of the direction, the tilt angle. Similarly, the length of the string in one MPPT should be same. So you can have different string lengths in different MPPTs, and you can have different tilt angles in different MPPTs, but you must make sure that you are having the same string length and same orientation for one MPPT. These will otherwise, what will happen is that different configuration to the same MPPT or different orientation will lead to uh, power production losses. DC cable, AC cable, and communication cables have to be run in separate conduits. This is important in regard to the concern of identifying the solar cables easily, and also maintaining them at a later stage after the installation is completed. Most importantly, you should not run your communication cable with the AC or DC cable, because that can distort the signal uh, of communication in the communication cable. Outdoor installed AC DC cables should be covered to avoid water accumulation in trees. So normally installation outdoor has been seen that people are using trays without a cover as well. So this is not recommended because the sunlight would be hitting your solar cable first thing. In the long run, even a UV rated cable can degrade. Further, water accumulation in trays could damage the insulation of the solar panel, because water when heated can damage anything. Also, you are not advised to have uh, MC4 connection points inside the cable trays, because it will create stress on the adjacent solar panels in the long run and damage the other solar cables as well. So please try to use the covers when you're using outdoor cabling, and similarly you should not be using connection points inside the uh, cable trays. AC and DC cables should be installed without a stress on terminal. So as you guys know that with Huawei inverter, you do not need a DC combiner, because Huawei inverters are made with fuseless design. And when you are bringing your connection, a string connection from the solar panels, you can directly terminate it to the solar inverter. Sometimes we have seen that the EPCs, the contractors, the subcontractors are not following the guidelines of the user manual, which strictly mentions that you should not be putting stress on the terminals of the inverter. So you can see on the left top corner is the AC cable is very tightly connected to the inverter. In order to save maybe few of your solar cable, you're putting your inverter to a big damage. These might withstand the stress for initially, but in the long run, the stress on the inverter will lead to loosening of your connection point, and thus the inverter warranty will get void. Similarly, at the picture, if you see at the left bottom corner, the the cable is connected very tight, and this is again putting a huge stress onto your solar inverter. At the center, you can see the cables inside the maintenance compartment is kept loose, which is very good, which is not putting any stress on the connection points. Also, in the future, if you are cutting your solar cables for some maintenance purposes, you will still have some extra length of solar cable which you can use to accommodate such maintenance uh, purposes. Similarly, on the right side, the DC cables are connected very loose with curves, and there is no stress on the connection point to the solar inverter. So similarly, at the bottom right corner, you can see both the AC and DC cables are installed with a very loose connection, and thus no stresses on the connection points. So please consider it when you are installing your HUAWEI solar inverters in the field. DC cables should be distinguished by colors, qualified and clear labels are advised for easy maintenance. Normally, we have seen is that when people win their projects, they become too much in hurry in procuring the things, and sometimes they buy both the polarity cables of the same color. Both could be red, both could be black, and such cabling method will lead to wrong is string connections to the inverter and long polarities. So you are highly advised to have two different colors, and normally the red and black is preferred for connecting your solar PV strings to the inverter. And when you are installing, when you are under execution phase of your PV plant construction, you have to do some tagging from the very start. This could be some temporary tagging, and finally, once you have completed your PV plant, you can remove those temporary taggings and you can put some permanent taggings on the two end of your solar cable. By the two end, I mean at the connection point to the inverter and solar panel string corners. So you have to do the proper taking of that. When you will be doing a maintenance in the future, that will help you a lot in understanding that, and also it will not lead to wrong string connections within the my time, within my experience with Huawei, where we have supplied inverters to our customers. We have seen this has been a very common error done by the people, that they believe that their connection is right because they have not done proper tagging at the end. They think that they have done the correct connections, but we see that negative polarities are connected to the positive goes to the negative, and yeah, such uh, you know misconnections happen due to not proper tagging. So you are highly advised to do proper tagging under execution, and you are recommended to do temporary tagging. And once the installation phase is completed, you can go ahead and do permanent tagging of the PV cables. Normally, such naming can be done as PV1 plus, which refers to string 1 positive, and PV1 negative, which refers to the negative side of your string 1. Similar fashion of taking you can follow in the different string marking. Crimp the metal terminal by a special tool. Now, if you open Huawei user manuals, in the first few pages, you will also be seeing the tools that is required in order to install the solar inverter. Now, Huawei is using two different type of connectors in different models. With few inverter models, Huawei is offering you amphenol connectors. Even with few other inverters, you are provided with MC4 connectors. So you are advised to use the manufacturer's tool, crimping tool, in order to crimp your solar cable to the connectors. Otherwise, these may lead to a loose connection due to the wrong use of your tool, and, loose connections can lead to sparking at the connection points, which can damage the inverter. Also, if you open the user manual, you will see that what is the length that you should be, insulation length which you should be cutting to joint it with the connector. So as you can see in the picture in the left side, and for one of our inverters, we are advising you to have around 8 to 10 mm of your insulation cut to put it to the connector. So use the right tool and make sure that the insulation cut is according to the user manual guideline. Fasten the DC connectors using recommended tool. Tightening tool, you can get it from the manufacturer as well. Normally what we do is that with HUAWEI inverter, we will be providing you a spare connectors which you can connect to your solar cables and connect to the inverter. But such tightening tools do not come inside the inverter packaging, which you need to source it from the manufacturer. If you are not using a proper tool for connecting, for tightening the DC connectors, these will lead to loose connections, and loose connection, as I said, can lead to sparking at the connection points. So please, I highly recommend you to use these DC connectors from the manufacturer, both from the Amphenol and from the MC4. Must use original connectors. Now, this is also a very common error done by the solar contractors. What they do is that the connectors which we provide you inside the inverter package, they use it, and due to a wrong, uh, connection, they dismantle it, they throw and try to use a third-party connector. The third-party connector could be anything from the market being used, which HUAWEI highly, negates and tells you not to use such connectors from third party, which is not from the same brand as of the HUAWEI connector itself. So you are advised to use Amphenol connector with the Amphenol connector, not from Jubaili or Wedmuller or any other third party. Similarly, for the MC4, you should use an MC4 connector. If you are losing one, try to procure a MC4 connector from the market, not from any other third party. In these scenarios, if HUAWEI finds out, these may void the warranty of the inverter. So please try to use same manufacturer connectors for connecting the joints to the inverter. These will lead to proper connection of your string to the solar inverter. Otherwise, this could also result in not a proper connection, loose connection, yeah, and also may not tight properly. There could be air gaps because the two connectors are not from the main manufacturer. The air gaps can result in air going inside the inverter, which is disturbing the IP65 rating of your solar inverter. So please, it is very important that you use the right manufacturer for connecting your solar strings to the solar inverter. Before connecting to the inverter, measure the DC and AC input parameters and keep record. So what people do is sometimes that they connect their solar strings directly to the inverter, and once they commission the inverter, they find out that one of the strings is not working properly, which could be an installation issue as well. So for that reason, they disconnect the solar string and try to find out what is the issue. If you are making such tables before you connect your solar string to the inverter, this will lead to your ease of understanding of how the inverter should operate based on the voltage, based on the short circuit current, based on the resistance which you have measured. So highly recommend you that before you connect your solar cables to the inverter, please measure the open circuit voltage, the short circuit current, and the installation resistance of all your strings, and then go for the connection, so that once you commission, you are aware of, yeah, that all these strings are connected properly, and they should be functioning properly as well. Remove the DC connectors using recommended tool. Again, the MC4 connectors should be dismantled, disconnected with the right tool. The tool which is used for tightening is normally uh, can be used for the purpose of disconnection as well. Similarly, for the Helios H4 amphenol connectors, you should be using the right tool for the disconnection as well. Again, the tool from the amphenol can be used for the connection and disconnection both. PLC communication, which is used with our 36 kTL and above size of inverters, mostly for the PV plants where your termination is happening on the MV cabinet. You have the option of going with the MBUS communication, uh, which is also called normally as the PLC, the power line communication. You do not need laying of RS485 cable in order to do communication of the solar inverters to the smart loader. So Huawei solar inverters can do communication via smart logger. Smart logger is a device which logs the data, which transmits the data to the Fusion Solar Cloud, from where you can, retrieve the data by making a pre-plant on our platform, Fusion Solar. Okay, so talking of these MBUS communication or the PLC, uh, you must take care of the farthest distance between the inverter. The farthest inverter in these type of connection should be at a maximum of 300 meter when you're using, single core AC cables, because your communication will be done through the AC cables. In we modulate the, the signal of communication on the top of your power cable on the two phases, which is then demodulated at your smart logger end, and again read from the smart logger point. So our smart loggers can support, and in case of any query where you have a specific project, please discuss that. But meanwhile, please make sure that your distance for the single core cable is around 300 meter, and for the multi-core cable, it can go up to 500 meter, because signal distortion is not a big problem in that case. PLC communication must use multi-core cable. Now, it is not must. I would say, I would rather say it is recommended. Why? Because with the multi-core cable, you can go up to longer distance, and also with the single core, you normally need to tie the AC output cables at every meter length via cable tie, which is a very hectic process. So with the multi-core, you do not have to do such a cable tying, and also you have the benefit of longer lengths between the inverter till the smart loader of up to 500 meter. MBUS communication inverter must be connected to AC combiner directly. So for the MBUS, you shouldn't be making too many AC combining points. Uh, make one single combiner, and from that single combiner, take the connection to the smart logger for the smart logger to read your MBUS data. Otherwise, if you're making too many combiners, that can distort the signal of communication. The smart logger cabinet should not be too far away from the smart logger. Um, Normally, this this slide is actually about the MBUS communication. When you're using an MBUS communication, uh, normally in projects for the MV termination, you have a transformer. In the transformer next to that, you have an LV cabinet. From the LV cabinet, you will be taking two small cables going towards the smart logger to send the data of the MBUS. So you must keep that distance from that LV side of your transformer to the smart logger at shortest. Short distance will facilitate the wiring of sampling lines from the transformer to the communication cabinet to ensure the quality of the of communication. RS485. So one way is the MBUS, which is normally used for higher big size projects having termination on the MB side. But the RS485 is the most commonly used way of doing communication of solar inverters to the smart logger. We have two different type of smart logger. The smart logger 3000A, the smaller one, and the smart logger 3000B. Smart logger 3000B comes in two versions. The bigger one version have 6 COM ports, and the smart logger 3000A has 3 COM ports. Now, to each COM port of the solar inverter, HUAWEI recommends to connect up to a maximum of 30 solar inverters in a daisy chain, not more than that. So it could be from 1 to 30 solar inverters going to one COM port of your smart logger. But with the smart logger 3000A, in the all COM ports, you must keep number of solar inverters less than 80, which accommodates most of your commercial and industrial size projects, because 80 inverters is high number. Normally the smart logger 3000B, which has 6 COM ports, is used for the utility scale projects, and these smart logger can accommodate up to 150 solar inverters, and in this scenario again, to each COM port you can connect up to a maximum of 30 solar inverters using RS485 communication. Environmental monitoring instrument, referred as EMI, in the market normally known as the weather station, is preferred to be used from HUAWEI recommended list. Now, in HUAWEI Smart Looger, there is a library which has predefined configurations for different weather stations compatible with HUAWEI. So you can always refer to that list. This list can be sent by us to you guys in person, or you can also refer to the user manual of a smart logger, which mentions the list of compatible weather stations. So a few of the popular ones are Luft, Mir NT, Kippenzonen, as you can see in this picture. And apart from this, there are many others also already built inside the library. And if you are looking at that list and you do not find the weather station which you normally use or you prefer to use, you must make sure that the third party, which is not in the HUAWEI library, should communicate our Modbus RTU, and then you can configure the such third party weather station as well in the HUAWEI Smart Logger to read the data. As you all know, these weather stations are normally used for deriving the performance ratio of the PV plant. So make sure you're using it from our renowned brand such so that it gives you a very precise value of the weather and you are getting the right performance ratio. The EMI is, if required to be connected to the inverter, it can also be placed at the end of the DC chain. So let's suppose you are having too many solar inverters, and for that you are using all the 3 components of a 3000 ACE smart logger. So in that scenario, you still have the option of installing a weather station at the end of the daisy chain of one of the strings. So you can only install a weather station at the end of the daisy chain, not a power meter. So people sometimes mix up. They might think that they can also connect a power meter at the end of a daisy chain solar inverter, but no. So you can only install a weather station at the end of a daisy chain of solar inverter. The main application scenario is when all the RS485 ports of the smart logger is connected to inverters, and also you need to connect an EMI to the same smart logger. So in such scenario, since you do not have a COM port available, since all being used by inverters, you can connect the EMI at the end of the daisy chain. One smart logger can only connect to an environmental monitoring instrument. So normally the weather stations come with this analog to digital converter. The digital converter, I mean the RS-45 converter. So which will be directly connecting to the smart logger or at the end of the chain of a solar PV inverter. So you can only connect one weather station, and by one weather station, you can still get the performance ratio. So you can install one weather station with our smart logger 3000A smart logger, which is normally being used in most of the projects that we supply for inverters to. But if you're using a smart logger 3000B, you have the option of connecting more than one weather station as well. RS485 cable from inverter to smart logger, the unused pins must be cut off. Now, you guys have two options of connecting the RS485 cable with our 36 kilowatt and above size solar inverters. There is a Ethernet port which you can use. There is also RS485 port. The Ethernet port also can be used to take out RS485 communication data using Ethernet cable. When you're using an Ethernet cable, there are 8 different cables, but only 2 of them would be carrying the data, the blue and the white blue cables. So the rest of the cables, the orange and other green cables, the white cables, all you will have to be cutting them properly and insulating them using a heat shrink cable sleeves or tapping somehow so that it looks clean at the smart lower end. You do not need to do any earthing of the cables which are not being used in connection to the smart lower. So you're not advised to do such cables. RS485 communication, the maximum distance of the last inverter in designated to smart lower should not exceed 1000 meter. Using RS485 communication, as I said, you can connect to one COM port about a maximum of 30 solar inverters. So from the smart loader in the last inverter, let's say the 30th inverter in the max scenario, these shouldn't be more than 1000 meter, 1 kilometer. So please make sure that such distance is taken care of when you are installing our HUAWEI solar inverters. And distance having increased more than 1000 meter will result in distortion of your communication signals. Keep inverter wire hole size for communication cable diameter selection. Now, this is also something very important. So, when you are buying your cables from the market, insulation thickness can vary for the same gauge size of your copper cable or communication cables. So, what Huawei recommends you is that you must use 1 mm square cross-sectional area communication cable with outer diameter of 14 to 18 mm. So similarly for the AC cable, if you look at the user manual of Huawei inverters, there is a specified cable or gauges that is recommended to you that you should use between such range. So please make sure that you are taking care of these gauges because when you will be terminating these cables to the solar inverter, the glands that will be taking this cable inside the inverter will have limits in the hole size. Similarly, so inside these glands you will find the rubber bushings, and the rubber bushings can be used as per the cable diameter. So you can cut those bushings accordingly as per your cable diameter requirement. But still, there is a limit which you need to be taking care as per the guideline mentioned in the user manual. For more information on in these topics, you can always refer to us. So this is a very general guideline on all the different keynotes of installation. So please always come back to us and keep putting your queries in the chat box by selecting the question mark option so that it goes to the Q&A mode at the last. So checklist. We discussed many different points. These points refer to the communication, uh, to the inverter installation design, to the connection design. We spoke of lengths that you need to take care of the RS485, and your PLC, what should be the maximum length, and what should be the distance between transformer and the smart logger. We spoke of the different orientation of solar modules. We spoke of the grounding, the inverter bracket earthing, preventing direct sunlight to the inverter, the grounding on the inverter itself, the points that you have option of, the weather monitoring instrument, which is weather station. Normally, you should be using Modbus RTU protocol based EMI if you're using an unlisted weather station. We spoke of communication cable diameter. We spoke of DC and AC cables to have proper marking and labels. So this is the summary of our today's webinar, and here it ends. Thank you very much, guys. I will move on to the Q&A mode. Please, if you have any query, now I will go through each question in which you guys have asked and which is populated in the Q&A section of this webinar. I will be answering one by one. Okay, so the first question is from Faisal Abdul Salam. He asked, what inverters are off-grid, off-grid time? I mean, we can use in remote areas since there is no electricity grid. Faisal, grid time means these inverters require grid at all times to provide an output. So inverters for an off-grid area is different compared to the inverters which we spoke of today in the installation mode. Huawei will soon launch such inverters which can be used for remote locations as well as an off-grid or standby application. Johnny is asking, we are planning to install a Sun 2036 KT inverter, and the smart logger will be 150 meters away from the inverter. Should we only use RS485 cable, or can we use the Cat6 cable? For this scenario, I recommend you to use RS485 cable because with the Cat6, between the two nodes, the maximum distance is recommended around 100 meters. So with the Cat6, you will lose the signal. So please use RS485 cable in this case. Mr. Faze is asking how many inverters can be in daisy chain and what configuration is required in such case for three-phase angles and synchronization. Um, you can daisy chain inverter for communication purposes, and we had a special slide for this daisy chain where I said that each COM port can accommodate up to 30 solar inverter. So from 1 to 30, you have the option of doing daisy chain of solar inverters. I have a question uh, regarding the panel mounting style. Would you recommend ballast type mounting installation, and if, what should we consider for ballast type placing them on concrete blocks? So in these question is more about the installation of your solar panels on a ballast type mounting. With the ballast type mounting, you do not have a very high, you do not have height. Normally, it is almost flush mounted to the ground with a 5 degree to 10 degree tilting. And yes, in these scenarios, if you're considering to use Huawei, you would be connecting. You can use your solar inverter installed at the wall, or it can be used indoor with the proper ventilation. What is the name of cloud monitoring platform of Huawei? Huawei used to have a platform called Natico, which is now upgraded to a newer, more aesthetically more beautiful platform, which is called Fusion Solar. This is a free monitoring platform if you're using our smart router or the new devices which Huawei has introduced, the smart dongle. How many inverters can be in daisy chain and what configuration? So I believe we just spoke of it a while ago. If there's any further question remaining in these, please put your question again in a different phrase so that I can further elaborate this for you. Zain Hussein is asking, please comment on the risk of lightning strike in general and relating to earthing. So Huawei inverters come with the built-in SPDs. So as you guys know, when the lightning occurs, it actually makes a very huge lighting in the space, which can result in suddenly high generation of voltage and current in your solar panels. Such in rush current, such high voltage in your solar strings can damage the inverter. Since Huawei has built-in SPDs, so Huawei inverters are protected. But if directly lightning comes and strikes your solar inverter, that is not a case of SPD protection. That is the case where lightning is directly touching your solar inverter. That will definitely damage your solar inverter. So you are advised to use lightning arresters, which you can read about, and you can install such lightning arresters so that if you have a lightning prone location PV plant, you are mitigating the risk of lightning directly touching your solar inverter. Is it necessary to keep same quantity of PV modules in one MPPT string even if it falls under the VOC and ISC limits? Yes, it is important to have two string going to same MPPT with same number of solar panels. If you are, let's suppose, having 20 module in a string 1 and in this, so you must have also 20 modules in a string 2 as well, which is connected to the same MPPT. Why? Because these two strings might be still within the VOC and ISC limits, but still they would be actually affecting the output of each other. So the string with the which makes less voltage uh, and the string which makes high voltage uh, will be affecting each other in a way that the high voltage string will follow the low voltage string. So you are actually reducing the output of a string which is capable of making more power, but you have connected it in parallel to a string which is making less voltage and thus less power. So this will affect the output of that MPPT. But yeah, you can have multiple MPPTs. In with multiple MPPTs, you can have different string lengths because they are independent. I want to know which inverters are off-grid from Sun 2000 3 kTL to Fusion 100 kTL, which can be used for residential and for commercial. Mr. Faisal, as of now, Huawei doesn't have such inverters which can be used for off-grid with a storage solution. Such inverters will be launched at the end of this year, and we will have a special webinar for that in order to introduce to you and the rest of our attendees. Do we have any further question? Is it recommended to short the string to measure the short circuit current? Yeah, you can only measure the short circuit current when you are short circuiting it. Next question, please. Please comment on fire risk to panels, inverters, transformers, cabling, etc. Well, fire risk is a very vast topic, and this can normally occur due to short circuits and due to flammable uh, assets which are in solar PV plants are installed on. So normally fuses are not recommended in PV plants because if the fuses do not burn in time, they will result in high temperature inside the inverter cabinet, and such high temperature will lead to fire risk. With Huawei, you have almost next to null fire risk uh, when you're using Huawei solar inverters. What is meant by PLC, program logic controller? No, PLC means power line communication, where the communication data is sent through your power line, which means this AC cable actually carries the communication data. Next, could you please provide a recording of the presentation? I will leave it to you, to my marketing team, and they will decide on this. Is there any inverter which can be used of marine application? Nihar, this question I believe you would be meaning for inverters which can be used for floating PV plants actually, because if for marine, I mean installation of solar inverters in the sea or lake or somewhere there where there is the installation of solar happens on the top of a water. Talk about. So our inverters are IP65 and the newer versions of inverter are IP66. So the IP66 can even, withstand strong jets of water. So definitely you can use our solar inverters in for marine application as well or for floating PV plant in general, I would say. Do we have any option to connect 50, 60, 100 KTL to Wi-Fi without having per month prepaid SIM package or using smart logger? Please guide. Samsung, yes, you can use our smart logger to do the communication of the 50, 60 or 100 KTL inverters. You will not be needing a SIM for that. You can use your Wi-Fi facility within the building and do communication through the smart logger between the 50, 60, 100 to the cloud of the Huawei. Had you considered the albedo of for rooftop project? Um, this is something which you need to consider for the design of your PV project. I would say albedo is important. You must consider it. Yeah. I believe I have answered all the questions. And if there is any more question, I am writing one email which you can always send your questions to in the chat box, which is technicalsolar.uae@jubailibros.com. Guys, if you still have any question regarding this presentation or in general about Huawei solar products, please send your questions to the email which I have just published in the chat section, and I will be replying your questions. Now we have a very short survey about the presentation delivered to you just now, and please fill up this survey, and then we will go ahead to a very small question and answer session regarding the presentation done.